Senzo Meyiwa's friend, Tumelo Madlala, points out accused number 2, Bongani Ntanzi, as one of the men inside the house when the soccer star was shot and killed. Madlala also described how 2 intruders entered the Khumalo home, one of the men with a firearm who demanded cell phones and money. Madlala became emotional as he detailed how he found Meyiwa lying on the floor. He is the 3rd person to testify who was inside the house when the former Bafana Bafana captain was murdered, following Zandi, Khumalo and Mthokozisi, Thwala. 5 men currently on trial for the October 2014 tragedy. And our SABC News reporter Chriselda Lewis joins us. Chriselda, good evening to you. Put our viewers into the picture.
Well, Iman, there had been an expectation today that one of the people who was going to take the stand was one of the individuals that was inside the house on the day that Senzo Meyiwa was killed. Tumelo Madlala taking the stand today to detail his version of what happened on that night. He, of course, contends that there were 2 intruders who entered Kelly Khumalo's mother's home, that's in Thwala, which ultimately led to Meyiwa's death. Let's take a listen to how he described the first intruder walking in.
While we were seated like that, after a short while, a person appeared from the door that has got direct access into the dining room. That person was having a firearm in his hand. He had the dreadlocks on the head and was also wearing a hat. One thing that he actually wanted was the phones and the money with a wielded firearm and the big eyes, or widened eyes.
Well, Iman, you remember that one of the other occupants that was inside the house was Thwala, who was the then boyfriend of Zandi, Khumalo. What Madlala basically says is that after this first intruder entered the house, Thwala managed to push that alleged intruder and ran out of the house. A scuffle then ensued between the occupants in the house and these alleged intruders. And that's where he says he spotted the 2nd person inside the house. Let's take a listen.
There was some tussling which was taking place there at the spot where the first person was. And that's when I noticed the 2nd person who was now wearing a hoodie.
Yes, where did you notice the 2nd person?
It appears to me that he may have been after Kelly, because remember Kelly went, she actually ran into that bedroom. Then there was also a stage where Senzo had pinned him against the door of the kitchen.
So as Madlala had described how Meyiwa had pressed that alleged intruder against the wall, a bombshell, Iman, Madlala pointing out accused number 2, Bongani Ntanzi, as one of the men who entered the house. Remember that one of the other individuals who had pointed to him was Zandi, Khumalo, who also said that he was one of the individuals inside the house at the time that Senzo Meyiwa was killed. Let's take a listen to that moment.
At the time that Senzo had pushed or pinned him against the wall, he had grabbed or held him on the upper arm. There's a demonstration here that the upper arm was actually grabbed and pushed or pinned against the wall by Senzo. So Senzo grabbed that upper arm and pushed it against the wall or pinned it against the wall. And that was the right arm that he pinned against. I don't want to keep on saying the second suspect. There is this accused person that is being pointed against by the witness. He had grabbed...
Nilo.
Hello, can you stand up?
Yeah.
So,
Why Bambelo?
yeah.
Yes, because
That's the very...
Yeah.
That's the very person. Now, if you go Asha,
Yeah.
even myself, and I went and threw some blow. After I had thrown the blow against him, then there was a gunshot that went off.
Well, after Madlala, Iman says he fled to one of the bedrooms after that gunshot had gone off, which he says was deafening. He says on his return, he made that painful discovery. Meyiwa was lying between the couch and the TV stand.
What was the position regarding that wound?
On the T-shirt, there was a small hole. And the witness is pointing on the chest again, the initial spot that he had pointed at. At the spot where he was lying, there were some stains of blood that looked like sprinkled onto the floor.
So Meyiwa then was rushed to hospital. Of course, this is the version of Tumelo Madlala, and that's where the news of Meyiwa's death broke inside that facility in Fort Loris. Let's take a listen.
I went back to Senzo. When I got to him, I unveiled him. Remember, the first thing that I actually asked him was, in an actual fact, why did you call me? Is this the reason why you called me? You called me to witness this thing? As I was busy talking to him, then came Kelly. She then took off the watch, the wrist watch, from the left hand. Then came the nurses, and they said that we should go back to the initial spot of our waiting. And I then kissed him on the forehead, then covered him or veiled him again. And I started crying.
Iman, just before I get to the next point, you would have watched the demeanor of accused number 2, Bongani Ntanzi, just after he was pointed out by Tumelo Madlala. You could see that, he had bent his head and started smiling. But at a much later stage, I could see him looking directly at Tumelo Madlala as he insisted that Ntanzi was one of the men that was inside the house at the time that Meyiwa was killed. And also towards the end of proceedings today, Madlala also accusing the lead investigator, Iman, in the second docket. You'd recall there's a second docket in this particular matter, which is docket 375. Basically saying that the lead investigator there, Joyce Buthelezi, had some kind of agenda and insinuated that she wanted him to change his statement and state that there were no intruders inside the house on that day. He said he was never going to do that. He's not friends with any of the individuals inside that house, apart from Senzo Meyiwa and Mthokozisi Thwala. You would recall, Iman, that docket 375 implicates those who were present inside the house when Meyiwa was shot and killed. And that docket 375 is a docket that the National Director of Public Prosecutions will decide on whether to pursue that particular docket after this particular trial has concluded. Cross-examination begins tomorrow.